How's it, everybody? Good afternoon. Aloha no, aloha kako on this Aloha Wednesday. Hope you're dry and hope you're warm. Some parts of the state are still a little cold, especially here on the Big Island. I am on remote this afternoon with you, and so welcome to Two Scoops. We have a special guest. So before we get to that, each month AAF Hawaii Two Scoops series will spotlight a different industry leader who will share life and career experiences along the way and as well as advice and takeaways learned along the way. To simplify things, the chat is moderated, and we encourage you to submit your questions in the chat box for the Q&A session, which will follow. And before we begin, we'd like to share with you about our annual Ultimate Trivia Showdown against the advertising industry's finest. Put your wait. Put your knowledge of media advertising to the test across various platforms while mingling with industry professionals in a thrilling and fun-filled evening of competition. You can either sign up as a team of up to eight people or register individually, and we'll help you form a winning team. This year, we're seeking 10 top-notch teams to race to victory. The event is on Wednesday, January 17th, Dave & Buster's Showroom, Ward Village, 6 to 9 p.m. For more information, visit aafhawaii.com. Okay. So with that, let us introduce our guest to you. Our special guest is Jennifer Tanabe. She's leading human resource and staffing company. Jen has over 25 years of design and advertising industry experience. She's helped launch and cultivate award-winning brands for clients such as Kaiser Permanente, McDonald's, Hawaiian Telecom, Starwood Hotels and Resorts, Hawaii National Bank. Before joining Altres, she was partner at and creative director at Wall to Wall Studios, a brand design agency that's located in Honolulu and Pittsburgh, and worked at various advertising agencies and branding firms, St. Louis, San Francisco, and in Honolulu. Numerous local and national design, 23 Women Who Mean Business. Welcome, Jen, to the show. Before we go any further, I understand that my audio is cutting out a little bit, and we'll try to, my voice is too strong for the microphone. And the other thing is that we are on remote today, so that's probably not helping it. Jen, welcome to the show. Let's
Thank
dive in.
you.
How did you start your career in the creative field, and what inspired you to become a creative director?
Well, I think from a young age, I was always interested in something creative. I used to make clothes for my Barbie dolls and love drawing and all of that kind of thing. And I also loved writing. And I truthfully didn't really know that this was even a career path for me. I wanted to be a fashion designer. So I wanted to go to school to study fashion. And when I was in high school, I babysat for a family, and the mom of the kids I watched, she was a graphic designer. And so she actually first introduced me to what graphic design was. And I thought, okay, well, that's nice. I still want to do fashion design. And then when I was in college, I tried to get into some of the introductory elective classes for fashion design, and they filled up very quickly. So I ended up in an advertising design class, and that just changed the course of my life and my career. I took design classes, I took advertising classes, business classes, and realized that I loved what the advertising industry had to offer. I could be creative, but I also had to be strategic. And what it enabled me to do was actually learn about a lot of other industries rather, that I didn't know anything about. And that's what I love about the industry today.
Is there a particular project or campaign that you are particularly proud of? And can you explain the creative
hmm
process behind it?
Well, I have so many projects that I'm really proud of. I guess one of the projects I would talk about is one of the most recent ones that I've worked on. And this is the rebranding of Altres, the company that I work at now. And I think for anyone on the call who works for a larger company, a well-established company, sometimes change is really difficult, especially when you're working for a company that's over 50 years old. And after many starts and stops, when I actually joined the team in-house and was able to help guide that rebranding effort. It's been so fulfilling because what was met at first with a lot of resistance, which, might not seem like such a big deal from the outside that, this rebranding took place, but there was a lot that had to happen internally in terms of the discussions and the collaboration that had to happen. And it's funny because now the goal that I had of making everyone in the organization feel like they were part of this rebranding, um, the entire team has really come to embrace it, and they'll sometimes come to me and be like, Jen, this thing has the old logo, or this isn't up to brand standards. And I kind of love it because these are people who are like in payroll and different parts of the company. So that's been a really fulfilling process. And it's been great to help the internal marketing team also really understand what it means to rebrand an established organization. I think it's been a learning process for them as well, and something that, because they've actively been a part of that process, they feel very engaged and feel a lot of pride. So
What role do you believe creativity plays in the success of a brand or company?
I think it plays a huge part. But I think maybe not necessarily just in the ways that are obvious. I think there's obviously creativity that's needed to come up with, if it is a rebranding or a conceptualization of a new brand. Obviously, you have to have the talent and the creative vision in place to figure out what is right for that brand and what visually can be interesting and stand out and all of that stuff. But I think part of the creativity is um, again in understanding how you're going to get people on board, right? So it's how do you engage the team internally and make them feel that as ambassadors of this brand, they are engaged and can feel a sense of ownership to it. And then it's what is the proper way to introduce or reintroduce your brand to external audiences, right? So that's where some of the creativity takes place. And I would say it's part creativity, but a lot of strategy, right? And planning and how those conversations can take place. Because I think one of the hardest things when you are in a creative field is understanding, especially in advertising, that no one's asking to see your rebrand. Nobody's asking to see your advertising. And so, what is a way that you can thoughtfully introduce or reintroduce yourself to audiences that didn't ask for it in the first place and, quite frankly, don't even care? So, how do you make them feel that this is something worth their attention?
Wow. How, current design, current creative trends, how do you stay on top of that?
I myself, I follow a lot of different agencies in social media. I look at whatever I can in terms of industry publications and websites and that sort of thing. But honestly, I just pay attention to a lot of different media. Like I'm someone who actually really likes to watch TV and shows, and not necessarily for the shows, for the content in the shows, but I like watching the advertising. I mean, same with like Super Bowl, but I over the years had to try to follow as much as I can just digital content, which, as everyone on this call knows, is a really difficult thing to do because every day we are bombarded with thousands of advertising messages. So that's one big thing. And I encourage my team to do the same thing. And there's a lot of internal sharing, right? If someone sees something that a competitor has done in social media, or somebody watches a film and they think there's a really interesting animation technique, that's something that I encourage everyone in the team to pay attention to and to share, because none of us can be looking at everything at the same time. And sometimes we're observing trends not necessarily because we want to follow them, or it might just be that we're trying to stay away from from what everybody's doing, right? A lot of the time it's, oh, everybody's creating these same kinds of videos. Okay, how do we make ours stand out or be different? It's also trying to recognize what trends aren't worth chasing.
What tools or software do you find essential in your role as a creative director?
Well, there are tools that, anyone in our industry who's on the creative side, utilizes all the time, right? So like Adobe Creative Suite. It's funny when I came to work at Altres, I am not a huge fan of Microsoft products, but that's what we have here. So I had to figure out, okay, how do I work within a Microsoft environment? We still utilize Adobe Creative Suite, such as InDesign and Photoshop and all that. Um, but we also try to look at what other tools we can implement, whether it's project management tools or tools that help us conceptualize new digital projects or website projects. One of the things that's been new to me and part of my growth is Altrust has a staffing side, we have an HR side, we have over 30,000 worksite employees who are part of our team, if you will, because we work with local companies and we employ thousands of people on behalf of other companies, right, and offer them benefits and that HR structure. And a big part of our internal communication and external communication is with Salesforce. So one of the big things I've been focused on is how do you execute creatively within a Salesforce environment? So that's been part of my learning and growth. But something that I'm trying to challenge our teams internally, not just our marketing team, but how do we think creatively and think about our target audiences, no matter what digital platform we're using. But those are probably the key tools that I use.
What qualities do you look for when hiring new creative team members?
So while technical skill and just inherent creative ability, right, is super important, I think what I look for the most is the attitude, the willingness to learn, um, and just how far that person has come from the time they started. I've looked at probably at this point like thousands of like student portfolios or portfolios, resumes, creative samples, writing samples for people who are anywhere from entry level to senior level. And if if someone has a lot of talent but has a terrible attitude, I will not hire that person. And I think that goes for people in pretty much every industry, right? But you can refine and mentor someone when it comes to their skills or their knowledge of a piece of software. Um, Generally speaking, you can't really change somebody's attitude. It's possible to make improvements, but I've just found that that is the much harder thing to deal with, and that can affect your other team members as well. So looking for chemistry, attitude, willingness to jump in, and just a general curiosity, a desire to learn more. Anyone who comes in thinking that they know everything, that's a big turnoff, because we all at any level of our careers can always, we should all be lifelong learners. So it's a variety of things. I think the baseline is having, if I'm hiring someone who's creative or, going to take a creative position, it's looking at samples of their work. But I want to hear them also talk about how did they get to that solution? How did they arrive at that solution? What's an example of maybe a solution they came up with that they weren't so pleased with? And what did they learn from that experience? One of the things that's challenging as someone in our industry is that given how sophisticated a lot of the digital tools are these days, it's sometimes hard to tell what someone has actually created themselves versus what did they utilize as a pre-existing tool, like on Canva or some of these other resources that come with a lot of things already built into them. It's really easy for anyone these days to take a photograph that looks really good and really professional. So I want to hear more about the process and understand what did they do themselves versus what was something that was provided that they worked with.
Can you discuss the evolution of your personal creative style over the course of your career?
Mhm. So when I was really young and starting off in the industry, somebody told me that, um, if someone starts to recognize your style of work, that it's time to kind of think about evolving. And so I try to be constantly evolving. I think in the beginning, and part of this is just like when I sort of came of age in the early part of my career, there was a very distinct style, as there is, kind of in every era. But there was a tendency to have, really kind of crazy typography and different layered graphics and just really crazy like photographic treatments. And I've tried to just not be too trendy. I think that's something that it would be a constant in my style, if you will, is not to be overly trendy unless it makes strategic sense. And I think one of the things that has made me more valuable as someone on the creative side of things in our industry is to just constantly be aware of the target audience we're trying to reach and just the overall strategy. And I tell a lot of younger people that are, or people just emerging, into our industry that um, if you're designing or creating um, without actually solving a business problem, then you are creating art. And I really believe that those of us who are, in marketing, advertising, design, um, ultimately we're solving business problems for our clients and we're coming up with solutions. Now, if we can do that and be creative and unique and do it better than anyone else has done it, um, then that's fantastic. But at the end of the day, um, there's some kind of metric, right, that we are being measured against. And I think that's what makes design and advertising different from art.
That's an incredible. Wow, that's deep. So when problem solving for your clients, I'm imagining that data and analytics
Mhm.
plays a lot into shaping that creative decision.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, it's first identifying that you're solving the right problem, right? Because sometimes in meeting with a client, I mean, this is more in my, agency days. Now I'm working in-house, but even internally, it's okay, do we know the problem we're solving for? And is that the right problem that we're solving for? Because sometimes just getting on the same page about that is half the battle in the beginning, right? And making sure that we have a realistic idea of how and again what are we solving for at this point in time, and then what is that metric of success, and what are we trying to get our desired target audience to do. And I apply that thinking internally here all the time because we've got different teams that come to our marketing department and they come here saying like, you know, I just need a flyer, guys. I'm going to this event. I just need a flyer that talks about these things. And then when you probe and have a deeper conversation, you realize, well, actually, a flyer is completely impractical because of the event you're going to. How are you going to distribute that? Nobody wants to carry paper. Is there a different way that we can achieve your desire to, provide a leave behind from Altres at that event? So whether you're in-house or you are someone working for an agency and you have external clients, it's really the skill comes from actually asking the right questions and listening and not just necessarily being an order taker, right? Like it would happen to me all the time in my agency life where a client comes and says, I just need a website. I just need a new logo. And when you probe deeper, you realize that thing they're asking for actually isn't what they need at all to solve the problem that they think it's solving.
How do you navigate and adapt to changes in the social and cultural landscape when developing creative concepts?
Um, I will admit that trying to do that in these last few years in particular has been really challenging. I think this is a really, probably more so than any time in my professional career, just this highly sensitive time. And I think I feel even more of a sense of responsibility in terms of what we say and how we present ourselves in any branding and advertising to make sure that we are being mindful of the varied audiences that we're speaking to, but also being cognizant of how maybe today those words could have different meaning than what they had 5 years ago. And it's interesting because coming into Altres, who deals with things that I think most people don't think much about or don't think there's a lot of like creativity in it, or um, it's interesting how certain messaging is received. Even sometimes when we're conveying very dry information about like new IRS regulations, or, particularly when we were in the throes of the pandemic. And I started working here kind of at the tail end of that, but we had to share with our clients um, information, let's say about, COVID restrictions or masking or whatever. And some of the responses we got from people, it's really eye-opening. Um, some people who maybe didn't realize there's an actual human receiving the responses. So it's been an interesting and sometimes frustrating exercise for me coming into this environment, knowing that especially not just internally, we have such a varied audience of employees, but externally, when we're sending thousands of emails out to our clients and their employees, really thinking about how that messaging is going to be received. And, I feel a real sense of responsibility, not only so that we don't get angry text messages and emails back, but that we're just being mindful and we're being thoughtful in the way we respond. We do not want to be contributing to any of the problems that we see in the world. So, yeah, sorry, I don't know if that's too general of a response for you, but that it's
No,
definitely heightened the awareness of what we say and what we show.
no, that's a very truthful response. Um, let's kind of switch things up a little bit for you. What are you working on today? What's the big job this week or this last couple of weeks that you're working on right now? If you can talk about it, because I know there's clients and there's things you can't say, but
Mm-hmm.
what can you tell us?
Well, we have some new creative stuff that we're working on, but actually the thing that I'm most excited about, which is going to sound really nerdy and not that interesting to most of you, is one of the things I've been trying to do since I started here at Altres is, and I think this happens in many larger companies that, they start off as smaller family owned businesses and then they grow and grow and grow to become much more sophisticated, almost more corporate. Um, Over time, marketing has kind of become this catch all for many different things that have nothing to do with advertising and marketing at all. And so, one of the things I'm really excited about is uh, towards the end of last year, we've really been thinking about what is our purpose as a marketing team? What purpose do we serve internally? What purpose do we serve within the organization? And how do we truly be an extension of, the goals and objectives that we have as an organization? And to try to redefine what we are and what we mean internally and externally to our clients. And we've been making progress for sure, but we have a lot of things that are going to be coming up in place that are more like, internal structural things that I think will free us up to be even more creative. And I'm really grateful because our executive team here, our owners, are actually very supportive of marketing and branding. And really, if I can build the business case for why we need to do something, they are very open and receptive to that, which is, I mean, I'm very appreciative of it because that is not the case in many organizations, especially when people who run companies are always looking to be more efficient. They're looking to cut costs, even in good times. And I usually have such support here if there's a rationale and a business case for why we want to do something. So that's why I'm excited for this year.
Very good. Best of luck to you and much continued
Thank
success.
you.
Uh, Share with us a story about overcoming a major creative obstacle and what you learned from that experience.
Mm. Well, I kind of started this conversation about it, but I think this was a really good example. And that would be just the process of helping Altres through this rebranding. And there were many times I didn't think it was going to happen at all. I'll be honest with you. The organization, prior to me coming here, had, worked with outside professionals who provided like really good recommendations, and um, everything was kind of met with resistance. And then then became part of the team internally, and I had to try to really understand like where is this coming from? Like, what is actually the thing that everybody is afraid of? And what it came down to was just this nostalgia. There was a little bit of a fear of change, but it was like mostly just a fear of losing what had gotten the organization to where it's at today. And once we could find a solution and a way to demonstrate internally that we weren't throwing everything away, we are evolving just as an organization, we've evolved. This is really just updating and evolving to reflect all the amazing things that have happened internally. So I think when they saw it was coming from that perspective and we kind of changed our approach a little bit, then there was much more openness. But it was very difficult, very challenging. And when we actually had our big company-wide event, unveiling the new branding, unveiling our new campaign, unveiling all of the items that started to be manifesting the new brand. It was such an amazing feeling because truthfully, I didn't know if we would even get there. And I had contingency plans in case we didn't, how we could continue to evolve. But um, the biggest lesson for me was just, how do you be a better listener and try to get to the bottom of where the fear comes from of change? And how can you address that in a compassionate way?
Let's see here. A couple of questions that we do have. Oh, let me get that back on there. There we go. Um, how do you decide which vendors or partners to work with? What criteria is there? And do you have a checklist?
Hmm, that's a really good question. Um, so I would say, and this is very topical for me right now because at the end of last year, we actually were putting out requests for proposals to various media partners. And after much convincing, we brought our media planning strategy buying back in-house after several years. And for me, the criteria was, look, I'm going to take the time to explain to you what needs to be done, what our objectives are for the year. And I want to see who actually listened and is coming back to us and that has that reflected in their proposals. So that was a big thing. I think most people who've worked with me know that I'm pretty easy to work with. I mean, I like to be collaborative. I want to be respectful. And so I expect the same from that person. So if you are that way to me, whether you are a print vendor, you are a, media partner, you're a production company, I will be fiercely loyal to you because I mean, if you are someone on this call who is on that end of things, I would say if you can be a good listener, if you can be the team player, if you can show that you're actually um, working towards and trying to help your client reach that goal, um, that's huge. Because I see a lot of, and I've requested estimates from people or proposals from people, and it's really just like they're checking a box. They'll shoot me back a proposal that's so fast. It's like, I don't think you even listened to anything I had to say. Um, so that's what I look for. Like I want to look for a collaborator. I want to look with, to work with people who you know, can be there for me when I need them to be, but I try to be fair. I'm never going to be someone who like everything's a fire drill. And that's something too from if you work for an agency or really anyone who partners with outside people, I'd say, okay, think about how you're approaching them as well, right? Like you can't expect people to bend over backwards for you constantly. You have to be fair in terms of your pricing, your timelines. Just because it's an emergency to you does not mean it should be an emergency to everyone else. And that's where you really gain that positive partnership, right? It's like, look, I'm going to give you as much time and money as I possibly can. But there are going to be times I come to you and I say, I'm so sorry. Is there any way you can do this in a day? Or I'm so sorry. This came up. I only have this amount of money to work with. Are you willing to do it? I mean, that's to me is how you build those lifelong or career long partnerships. It's not just about being demanding all the time and who's going to rise to the occasion, right? It's got to be this give and take. I don't know if I answered the question properly, but I would say there is kind of a mental checklist I go through, which is responsiveness, um, fairness in the rate, but responsiveness is actually a really big one. And did you listen to me? Did you get back to me? I can't tell you how many times I reached out to like photographers or printers and they just literally didn't get back to me. Or they got back to me like a week later. It was like, hello, okay, never again. I can't count on you. If you've proven that you're someone I can count on, I will come back to you over and over and over again. So,
I am answering my emails quicker from now on. Okay, very good.
even if I can make one point about that, because I know people and stylistically where it's like, I don't want to respond to you until I have everything together and then I'm going to respond to you. But I am more of a proponent of like, look, if you can even just acknowledge my message, even if you don't have the answer right now, but just to say to me, like, got it, received, I will get to this as soon as possible, at least to acknowledge that you heard me, that you received it. I love that, actually.
so in other words, it's almost like text message response just to let.
Yeah, I mean, just to let me know, like I got it, and I can't answer all your questions right now. I got to check on some things. Let me get back to you. But I did get your message, and I promise I'll get back to you as soon as possible. I feel like that little trick, even for myself, has helped so much just to let people know, because otherwise, then they're not sure. Like, did I get sent to junk mail? Did you even get it? Did you fall off the face of the earth? What happened?
That's what they're usually asking me, but that's a different subject. I know you touched on this a little bit earlier when you talked about AI and how you were responding to or trying to decide through your creative process that something that came from somebody else is how it was generated. How do you think AI will continue to change things?
So, I mean, it's such a vast category. When you say AI, I mean, and one of the things that, I know this isn't unique to us, but we're really trying to see, and I think most businesses actually were using some form of AI, whether, you had a chat function on your website or, um, any kind of like automated customer response type of situation. Like most of us were actually already using AI, but I think where it's kind of become into this more invasive and at times oppressive area, right, is in the creative process. Um, and I would say that at this point, when it comes to creativity, I think most of us on the call would probably agree that it might be good for initial content generation, but is by no means the absolute solution, right? So one of the things we're looking at right now is internally is like, for example, on our job side, our staffing side, we have to generate like hundreds of job listings on behalf of our clients every month. So we're trying to see, okay, is there a way to utilize AI to generate some of those job listings where it's not right now, there's a human being writing all of those. And there are a lot every single day. So how can we utilize it at least to generate initial content and at least to build up like a database of job listings so that chances are there's probably a similar job in the past we've staffed for. So can we take that, search, find it, and then edit it as needed as opposed to starting from scratch every single time? And we're also looking at how we can better serve our clients using AI. Right now we have chat function, but can we do something that's a little bit more sophisticated in like our proprietary HR software? We're just, and I'm sure everybody in their own way is thinking of how to utilize it. But I would say, as with so many other pieces of technology, it is a tool. It is not a replacement for the way that somebody thinks. And as of right now, a way to truly be accurate in terms of strategy and comprehending a target audience. I think it can do a pretty good job, but right now you still need someone um,
To
to
check.
vet it and mind it. It is not just like set it and forget it and that's it and it's going to solve all our problems.
Another question from the chat. Who is Little Superstar and what makes him so famous? Laughing
Let me
emoji and
guess.
cutting
Let me
emoji.
guess who asked the question. I would say one of the greatest films of all time. I think James Sereno would agree. Maybe he can share the link to it to all of you. It is a film that we have been enamored with for the past 20 years.
Question for you for also from the chat right now. What are some of your favorite brands? What do you like about them? What do you think they're doing right?
Hmm. That is an excellent question because there's so many. I am particularly drawn to advertising that's about products or categories that are very dry, but they've been able to do some amazing, hilarious things with. So, an example of this is in the area of insurance, right? Like auto insurance, right? Which just is a very dry category. It's a very utilitarian category in and of itself, but there's so many amazing examples of creativity, right? Like I think it's Progressive, which is the brand that has I'm forgetting the character's name, but he's helping people to not be like their parents, right? So I
Oh,
think that
oh,
whole campaign is absolutely genius um, and relatable, whether you think you're a parent or you think you are becoming your parent, right? So really any brands that are able to touch into that human insight and that human emotion, I think there are so many great examples of that. And you guys are going to laugh because those of you who are on the call really early, Ryan was playing BTS music because he knows how I feel about BTS. But actually, I blame my daughter, my 14-year-old daughter, because she was really the BTS army. And then I got dragged into it because she wanted me to learn everything that I could about it. So I sort of like unwittingly became army because of this. But I will say, if you are someone who's a fan of K-pop, those production companies do an amazing job of shaping brands. And what I'm fascinated about is the attention to detail to every single thing, right? From the performances themselves to the strategic way that they release music, to the strategic way that they release content, to the ways in which they utilize the same content on multiple platforms, right, to make money, the way they promote it, if you buy physical products, the way that they are packaged, the way that the photography is shot. I mean, even if you are not someone who's into K-pop at all, you should just study the way that they are geniuses at branding and marketing. Every single group. I'm just absolutely floored. Like, take the music style out of it if that's not something that's interesting to you, but just look at the way in which every single album, every single person, every brand is cultivated. It's absolutely genius. And it is a study in being truly excellent in every detail.
that answers the next question too. Last call on questions, everybody. Once again from the chat, last call on questions. And thank you so much for your questions. And thank you so much for that, Jen. Thank you so much, and that incredible insight on BTS and just the Korean music industry and K-pop was awesome. One last thing, we do get a lot of college people that are watching. Do you have any words for them as they are looking to possibly being part of your industry?
Yes, I mean, most of you who are on the call, you've heard me talk about this before. I mean, I think that in addition to, of course, um, doing everything you can to hone your craft, whether you are, a budding designer, art director, copywriter, or even someone who just wants to get more into, the account management side of it or their strategy or, just really being a student of the craft and striving for excellence. I also think just being very proactive, being somebody who will reach out, who will, study what the different firms do here, right? Like the people that stand out to me are the ones who truly did their research and they looked into the different agencies. They know what clients they have. They can actually, it actually shows that they've done their research and feel like they could be a good fit. But continually honing your craft and even just at this point exhibiting some basic behaviors of someone who is a responsible worker. Showing up on time, showing up for an interview on time or slightly early. And you guys who've heard me talk before, who are on this call, know what I'm going to say next. If somebody has taken the time to give you an interview, to meet up with you, to have coffee, to review your portfolio, to give you advice, write them a thank you card. I mean, A++ points if you actually send a physical card, but at the very least, send an email. Send a note of appreciation because anyone that you're meeting with, there's a high likelihood that they are very busy. And the fact that they've taken time out to speak with you, to interview you, they prioritized you over whatever else was going on in their day. And if you can continue to have that connection, even if they couldn't hire you at that moment, this industry, particularly in Hawaii, is very small. And you never know how someone who, is an ally of yours can later on, either you reconnect as coworkers, they can refer you to another job. It's just really good to keep those positive connections if possible.
Once again, we've been talking with Jen Tanabe, and mahalo for her patience as we've been going through today with a few technical things on my end. And Jen, if anybody wants to follow you, what social media are you on, or how
Mhm.
did they get a hold of you?
So I'm probably most active on Instagram and LinkedIn, but I'm at Jen Tanabe, um, all one word on Instagram. If you are someone who wants to share a portfolio, I'm always open to reviewing portfolio, giving feedback. My email address is jennifer.tanabe@altres.com. It's a little harder for me these days to like meet up with people in person, just because of scheduling and having a daughter who's very active in dance, and I'm basically her Uber driver. So in person is a little difficult, but happy to jump on a call or Zoom with you and we can talk. That's how you can find me.
All right, Jen, thank you so
Mhm.
much for being with us and Happy New Year. Hey, just a
Happy New
reminder,
Year.
two events coming up real quickly here that we want to let you know about. And let's see here. And that, of course, put your knowledge of media advertising to the test across various platforms while mingling with industry professionals. If you need more information, aafhawaii.com. Mahalo to our team and malamopono aloha au hui ho. I'll be back on Oahu for the next one.
Thank you, Billy. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, AF.